We're tracking a lot of reaction to the new trade deal between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So what changes are under the proposed agreement? Here are some of the highlights. The new NAFTA has a new name, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA. On autos, Canada can export up to 2.6 million vehicles to the U.S. tariff-free. That's 40% more than what we currently export. 75% of autos must come from either the U.S., Canada, or Mexico, up from 62.5%. And 40 to 45% of autos made in Mexico have to be made by workers who earn at least $16 U.S. an hour. So with this, autos avoid tariffs. Chalk up a point for Prime Minister Trudeau. But steel and aluminum tariffs will stay in place, a win for U.S. President Trump. Canada managed to keep the Chapter 19 dispute resolution, which allows this government to challenge punitive tariffs on products like softwood before special trade tribunals. Point for Trudeau. But Canada made concessions, including on dairy. U.S. farmers will have more access to Canada's dairy and poultry market, about 3.6% of it. Canada also agreed to end what's called Class 7 pricing, a milk class created last year that slashed prices on some Canadian dairy products. This is a big win for Trump and could cause trouble for Trudeau. The Liberals call the new agreement a good deal. The opposition says the Liberals capitulated. Which is it? It's time for the Power Panel. In Toronto, Brad Levine of Council of Public Affairs, Yolande James, former Quebec Liberal cabinet minister, is in Montreal. And here with me in studio, former policy director to Stephen Harper, Rachel Curran of Harper and Associates, and Marie Vastel of Le Devoir. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Nice
Hello.
to see you.
Hello.
Yolande, I'll start with you. The big debate today, politically at least, is this really a win-win-win?
I mean, I think it's at the end of the day, it is a win for the government in that I think it's important to remember where we started in this negotiation. During the campaign, President Trump was pretty clear about his will to end free trade altogether. But and that the government was able to maintain, I know especially here, cultural exemptions, Chapter 19, obviously, as others will speak to, I'm sure, issues with respect to dairy supply management and tariffs with aluminum will be an important obstacle for the government in the coming months, and not to mention the fact that we're in election now, as well as the fact that the federal government will be up for election in 2019. So all that plays out. As all that plays out, we'll be able to get a better assessment as to if it's a win-win long-term, as if this deal ages well. But certainly, with respect to whether it was a good idea to sign this deal or not, I am unequivocal about the fact that this was the smart thing to do when you think of the future and the certainty with respect to having a deal signed today.
Brad, was signing the deal the smart thing to do?
Well, you know, today was the deadline that Donald Trump imposed in order to serve notice to Mexico and give them 60 days. We also have the midterms coming up. So, you know, one of the things is, you know, the interesting thing about how the commentators are looking at today's deal is, you know, of course we gave up, but it could have been a lot worse. And that's always a tricky thing because people who don't see that Trudeau gave up much, but maintained much of the core of the original NAFTA is a good thing for the country. So when we take a look at things like auto, this was one of the fundamental irritants by the progressive forces in this country when we had the first U.S.-Canada free trade agreement in the late 80s and then expanded it to NAFTA, is that the industrialized sector like auto was going to low-wage areas. What I find most interesting is that we are finally taking steps in this continent to get wages in Mexico up, as opposed to the continual downward pressure of wages in Southwest Ontario down. So in that respect, those are good for auto and the supply chain within that sector, but the dairy farmers are going to be pretty upset at about $450 million worth of the market that Trudeau gave over to Trump today.
Rachel, how important is the fact that this was negotiated with Donald Trump in evaluating the outcome today? Even politically?
Yeah, it's hugely important. I think the government gets a lot of credit for being able to, A, strike a deal with Donald Trump, and secondarily, politically, no matter how bad this deal is for Canada. And it is worse than the original NAFTA deal. So this is not a win-win deal. We are making a whole series of concessions, some of which are very expensive. But the government is going to get a lot of political credit because Donald Trump is on the other side of the negotiating table. So I think it's, it is certainly to the government's benefit that they have been negotiating with Donald Trump. The fact that he is so widely disliked here is going to help them in selling this deal. But let's be totally honest, he can take this as a win. Yes, this is a day for relief, I think. We needed a deal. I totally agree with Yolande. Signing a deal is infinitely better than having no deal at all. But this is not a day to celebrate. I think it's a day for relief more than anything else.
Marie, what was your take on how it played out politically? I mean, the opposition's main point is that you didn't make any gains, so don't call this a win.
Yeah. I think it's easier for the NDP to I guess, poke holes into the Liberal deal with Donald Trump, given their traditional position on free trade deals. I think it was harder for Andrew Scheer today to argue that it's a bad deal, just because, well, first of all, Rona Ambrose, Brian Mulroney all said, essentially, all in all, Canada pretty much got the objectives that they were hoping for, and also because, but that goes to the NDP as well.
They said that their statement was basically that it helped with the certainty, right? Getting the deal.
Yeah, but
was
Mulroney
a good
did say
thing.
that all or almost all of the objectives seem to have been attained.
With the caveat, the devil could be in the details.
Yes,
but
then
he said it was
Andrew Scheer,
significant,
but Andrew Scheer coming out and saying it was all negative, it was all bad, and again, like the NDP not saying what he would have done differently, I find makes it a difficult argument when you're not willing to say how it could be better, how you would have done it differently. I think kind of takes away from your criticism. I think, though, that a lot of the negative points that we will hear in the next few days are with dairy, for sure, without a doubt. I mean, if you look at this deal, and Rachel can say that it's all concessions and other people can say that it's all wins, but if you look at dairy, it seems to be the biggest loser. I think Ottawa won on kind of protecting the auto sector as much as they could. I mean, there are quotas, but by the time we reach those quotas, it might be never. They kept Chapter 19 on a dispute resolution mechanism. They got rid of Chapter 11 on investor state dispute resolution mechanism. So it seems like all their deal breakers or all the things that they absolutely wanted to keep or get rid of, they did. But then on dairy, I guess, was the bargaining chip. And I think that is not a criticism that will go away now or in 2019, potentially.
Brad, you look like you want to weigh in.
Well, no, I remember months ago, Trudeau said that he wanted, these extensive, gender chapters and comprehensive language on Indigenous. I know that there's...
Well, there is some language on Indigenous, and
there's
some
one
on
paragraph,
gender.
but he talked about fundamental chapters. He talked about big wins. So, while he did make a number of concessions, because that was the whole exercise, we have to remind ourselves that Trump wanted this trade deal to be renegotiated because he felt that the Americans got the raw deal in the last round. Canada and Mexico did not ask for these changes. So the question then becomes, what did Trudeau give up in order to get something signed to provide certainty? I respect the fact that industry wanted some level of certainty. But prescription drugs is another thing that the Americans won on. I mean, the interesting on the political side that we haven't talked about is does this give Trump a boost in the midterms? And, whether it's a good deal or a bad deal, we'll have to wait and see. We'll look at those details, and we'll have to see how it plays itself out. But if it re-elects a Republican Congress, then I think the history will look back at this trade deal differently.
It's also hard to see what took so long, I think, because when the Prime Minister was asked, and Chrystia Freeland were asked, when did you feel, you might get a win? When did you feel there was a tipping point? They both alluded to things that happened, at least a few weeks ago. And so one has to wonder, why did we have to wait for, 11:15 on September 30th?
Well, the big one that they said was Chapter 19, when they agreed to capitulate on Chapter 19, which I think, according to Katie Simpson, happened Saturday.
Yeah, but also on the car, on autos, right?
autos,
Where they thought, this is our creative proposition, this could happen. it's odd that it had to happen.
Okay, there's a lot more to discuss on this subject, so we will pick it up right after a quick break. You're watching Power and Politics on CBC News Network, also broadcasting on Sirius XM's Canada Talks channel. Stay with us.